Welcome to the Living the Dream podcast with Curveball. If you believe, you can achieve. Welcome to the Living the Dream with Curveball podcast, a show where I interview guests that teach, motivate, and inspire. Today, I'm joined by serial entrepreneur, profit first, and bank on yourself professional, and the co-founder of the Wealth Wisdom Finance podcast, Brandon Neely. Brandon and his wife are the co-founders of the podcast, and we're going to be talking to him about his story, his show, and what the profit first, bank on yourself actually means. So, Brandon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, thanks for joining me, Curtis. I'm excited to be here and share all about my curveballs, that's for sure.
Why don't you start off by telling everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, you kind of alluded, serial entrepreneur. I'm also married for 18 years. We've been married and 18 years and doing a business together for almost all of it. Also a parent of a 6-year-old and a caretaker of a 75-year-old. So wear a few hats.
Okay, well, just kind of tell us about your journey and how you and your wife got started on this journey.
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to it. We used to, well, partially we always wanted to make a difference in the world. I used to be in the music industry back in the day. I was in the military for a little time. And really, it was all about changing the world, making a difference in the world. And so that's what led us into the coffee shop that we had. And we loved that experience. It's all about ethical economics and community building. However, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a caretaker of my mother-in-law, and I now have a 6-year-old. And it was about 6 or 7 years ago where we were starting to take care of her, and my father-in-law. Well, 10 years ago was when we were taking care of him and her. And then we found out we were pregnant, and we need to make a change. And so we moved into the financial services, and I can tell you more about that story if you want to hear about it. But really, I'm now in the financial services because I had so many curveballs that happened that led us into finance. But I'm all about changing the world, making a difference, whether it's in finance or coffee. That's my main goal.
Well, I definitely want to hear your story about the financial service industry, but first, tell us about your time in the music industry.
Oh, there's a few things I can say and cannot say, but I used to work for some of the biggest celebrities in the world, and saw a lot of things, got out of it after seeing sex, drugs, rock and roll, literally. And I'm just like, all right, I cannot stay here. I gotta move on. It's the good industry, but it just wasn't for me.
I completely understand. Well, give us your story about the financial services industry.
Yeah, so I ended up in the financial services mainly because with our coffee shop back in the day, we running it is 7 years in, and I remember literally this was a total curveball that happened, that I was at the gym working out with my wife on the other side. Staff was working. Actually, the staff that called me the other day, I guess 7 years later. Just remembered this. So he calls me. I don't answer the phone because I'm like, I'm running. I'll deal with it later. So I move on to the other one, and running, and he calls my wife, which she's right there, and she's like answers, and he's like, "You guys need to come in. The store is falling apart." Well, we had heard the rain outside. We didn't realize that the roof was off. They didn't put a tarp on, and the whole coffee shop got flooded. Right, totally flooded. And we go in afterwards, and we're like, "Oh man, our whole business is down the drains, literally." Well, we didn't realize that my wife at the time was pregnant. We had no idea. We found out a few months later. But we were like, all right, we were able to overcome this flood because of the systems we had put in place for emergencies, and using our financial acumen, which we didn't know we had. We were just trying to be smart. Um, and because of what we did, we were able to sell the business and not close the business, which is two different things. To be able to sell it to somebody else, and move transition, because guess what? I could, as a business owner, do certain things like eat ramen, or things that some people are like, yeah, it's okay, you love it. But when you're a parent, you have to make some different changes. So we decided to pivot, and I applied to work with my mentor. Now, applied to work with him. He said, "No, you're too entrepreneurial. I can't hire you." So 2 months later, I'm starting to look for a job, because I'm like, all right, I got to go look for a job. I got to sell this business. Got to um, provide now, I guess, for three instead of just us. Um, so we start looking. I am. My wife's like, "You, I'm not going to get a job because I'm 7 months pregnant." Well, then my mentor calls and says, "I have an idea. How about you and your wife start your own financial service agency, and I'll train you?" I was like, "Oh, that sounds awesome." So then we started down this road, not realizing that the financial services world is very, how should I say, corrupt and complicated and opinionated. We just knew that this system that we had built in place made a difference for us, and we wanted to help more people. So that's how I ended up in this industry, not realizing that there's so many crazy opinions out there.
Well, tell the listeners what the Profit First, Bank on Yourself motto is.
Yeah, so profit first, that is a way of kind of like the envelope system, where as a business owner, you are, and it's two different systems, but it's making sure that you are building a profitable business and you're paying yourself fairly. So instead of all the money coming in, and this is the way most people run their finances, is they have um, more month than money, right? You ever heard that? I think that's what they say, more month than money. Um,
I have.
Meaning their expenses are outweighing, right? So what we want to make sure of is that we run a profitable business. And so instead of, you know, living in a world where it's we're just eating and consuming, right? This is like the Thanksgiving uh plate. We have so much food and we just eat it all, right? Well, what Mike McAllowitz, the founder of Profit First, says is make smaller plates, right? So then you have uh, your income coming into the business, but then you separate it. You have taxes, you have owner's pay, you have profit, right? And then you have OPEX, right? So then you're building a profitable business, and you're not spending money you don't have to run a business, or you're just saying, oh, I'm just going to run it on Facebook ads, or I don't know, whatever. So we want to like run a lean, profitable business, and then I implement my banking yourself strategies of, okay, one of the banks that I use happens to be a life insurance policy that I'm able to have control over. So it's really a way of giving your money jobs and allocating it in the right way.
Well, what advice would you give somebody who is looking to start their own business?
One, there's three things, and I tell this to everybody. If you want to start a business, know that that you're called to it, right? Because running a business is hard. Most people, or podcast or anything, you run a podcast, right? It's not the easiest thing. People think, oh, it's easy. You just run a podcast. Like, no, it's a lot of work, right? So you got to know that you're called to it, right? Then my second thing I tell every business owner is have a team around you that care about you, not just what you produce, right? Because if they don't just care about the business, but they care about you as a person, right? And so having mentors, guides, um, coaches along the way, and then know your numbers, right? A lot of people, I swear to God, they're sleepwalking through life. They have no idea. So, especially, don't just abdicate it to somebody else, but um, know your numbers so you can make smart moves. That's the problem in our world today is we don't even know our own numbers. We're just using a credit card like a lottery ticket or something. I don't know. Those are the three things for sure.
Well, what are some of the signs that a person should look for to know if they need to make a big pivot in their business using profit first?
Yeah. So what I like to think about is as I'm growing a business, one is I want to make sure I'm taking care of me, us as an OPEX or owner's pay. And then as these are growing, I just make it's an 80-20 rule kind of idea. So 20% of what you do doesn't matter, 80% does, right? Even if you look at probably your podcast, right? You're going to get most of the viewers from 20% of the podcast and 80% doesn't work, right? So knowing those numbers and knowing what to double in on, it's kind of like Facebook ads. You can do those tests, right? And so starting to figure out what's working and then amplify those things, right? Maybe you don't put all your money into one thing, but then as you know it's working, then that's when you turn up the dial, right? It just helps to know what's working and what's not. And then you double in on what's working, right? Why would you keep working on stuff that doesn't work?
Okay, everybody, it's Michael E. Cullen II.
And I'm Sesame and Carta from the All Too Real 2 podcast. We're passionate about movies, TV, and pretty much all things pop culture.
Dive into the chaos of failed sitcoms, direct-to-video sequels, and the quirky realms of cinema and TV.
Join us every Thursday for your dose of All Too Real 2 entertainment.
We'll guide you through debates like whether Howard the Duck qualifies as a superhero.
Ponder if Larry the Cable Guy could be the new Rock or Schwarzenegger.
Discover if some shows and movies should have stayed in the cutting room.
Ever heard of a sitcom featuring that dictator with the funny mustache? Well, we watched it.
We're dedicated to unraveling the peculiarities of pop culture, sometimes with awesome guests.
So, if you're into the eccentric world of pop culture,
listen and subscribe to All Too Real 2.
Available wherever you find podcasts
and on Age of Radio.
So describe what it would look like. Let's say if I was a business owner and I wanted to use the bank on yourself model.
Yeah.
What would that look like?
Yeah. So again, what I like to think about is banking yourself is, and it's also known as infinite banking. It is a cash flow management system, kind of like Profit First, but it's what Dave Ramsey loves to hate on, and he'll say all day long that it's this or that, but it's a whole life insurance policy that's properly designed that has high cash value, right? So not all policies are the same. Not all whole life is the same. You want to work with a specialist that knows how to build these policies. That's me and my mentors, right? But how I've used it is, think about it this way: your need for financing is there all the time, right? Most people need capital to start a business, right? And the most profitable business in the world. If you, Curtis, tell me, what do you think is the most profitable business in the world?
That can have more money than month instead of the other way around.
But what's the most profitable business in the world? If you were to say if you look around, what's the most profitable business that you would think about it?
Maybe Apple.
Yeah, or banks, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right, right. Banks use your money to then give to somebody else, and you might get a low interest, but they'll charge you 25% interest on just a credit card, right? So you learn, don't do what the banks tell you to do what the banks do, right? And your biggest investment, in my opinion, and biggest risk is you, right? Meaning yourself as a business owner, you should protect that investment, right? That's why I like it. I like life insurance, is because if it was a cash machine, you better believe you would have put it on. You would have some kind of a policy on it, right? Some kind of making sure if the cash machine broke, that it's going to be okay, right? All day, every day, people would do that. But in this case, you just happen to be the cash machine. And I also want to double it and use it, not just for retirement or savings, but I want to use it for a way of putting my savings through to then use for other things. So I use my policy all the time, and I've used it to buy an office condo. This building or condo that I'm in right now, I used my policy to be my own mortgage, and then my business now pays me rent, right? So then I'm playing two sides of the same of a coin, right?
Absolutely, and that's very smart. Talk about the still method practice. What is that, and how can people use that?
Yeah, so this all goes together, and the way I've again thought about this, and you might agree, right? Most people are sleepwalking through life. They don't even know. They haven't asked any qualifying questions of themselves, right? They are, what I like to say is, and this is our book, the Still Five Smooth Stones, is our interactive money journal that we created, and it's part of, learning the profit first system, learning the bank on yourself system, running a business, and me and my wife's conversations. We've had many conversations through the years. Every month we go through the still method ourselves. So what the still method is not chaos, right? So this is what we like to call it's confusion, haphazard, anxious, overwhelming, and stressful, right? That is the acronym for chaos, or the words we put into it. Now think about COVID. Think about your taxes, right? Think about, I don't know, whatever's happening in the world, right? Most of the time it's chaos, right? And a lot of businesses make a lot of money off of confusion, right? There's a Donald Miller says, if you confuse, you lose, right? So if we're all confused, we're losing, right? So we need to move from chaos to clarity, right? Make sense there? So then we've defined that we don't want to live in chaos, but most people say they don't want to live in chaos, but they do, right? Because they haven't actually taken the time to think. You ever heard of the book, The Road Less Stupid?
No, I haven't.
I highly recommend that book. It's by Keith Cunningham, and he is like the road less stupid. And most of the time he says, go think. Now go think. Most of the time it's the shortest thing in supply now is nobody knows how to think, right? We consume, but we aren't good at thinking. So the still method came from we're people of faith, right? And so in the Bible, he says, be still and know, right? Step back, right? And so we made this acronym, and whether it's a life insurance policy or profit first, it doesn't matter. But you have to set your sights. You have to know where the heck you want to go. Most people have no idea where they want to go, right? So set your sights. Then you have to track your in and out, meaning you have to budget or at least kind of know where things are. Like this is, you go to a baseball game and they track stuff, right? Inspect your progress. You don't just track it, but you inspect it. Look for 1% adjustments and then live deliberately, right? And if you do those things, whether it's in your marriage, with your kids, with your money, set your sights, track, inspect, look for 1% and live deliberately, you will be a lot further along than most people. Most people haven't even written their goals, right? So write those things down. You can even you not even use the book, but I recommend the book because then it gives you prompts and helps educate you along the way.
Well, tell us about your money journal and your podcast. What can people expect when they look through the money journal, and what can they expect when they listen to your podcast?
Yeah, this is not going to be a podcast that you just say, "Oh, I'm going to listen to this. I'm going to buy this program, and everything's going to be solved for only $19.99." Right? That you know what I'm talking about. There's all those gimmicks out there, right? And most of the time, those are called Ponzi schemes. And so, what this and in our podcast, it is helping you think, right? We are not just going to we might give you information, thoughtfulness. We'll talk about history, right? Right. But it's within the book, it is a interactive money journal, right? It is a something that you're dialoguing with. We might give you ideas and prompts to think through it, but in essence, we are just helping you find the answers for you. Because I don't know about you, Curtis, but we're all different people, right? We have different goals, different backgrounds, right? And so what I might say may not work for you, right? Based off of age and health and all the goals, right? So you have to figure out what works for you. That's why I don't like Dave Ramsey of the certain everybody's in one big bucket. It's not the case. That's any financial person that says everybody should do this. Well, that shouldn't be true, but you're able to ask the right questions. And sometimes the answers may be different on seasons, right? So that's why you might buy multiple books and the answers might be different, right? But it's an interactive study.
Well, what are some of the ways that we can be thoughtful about the social impact of how we use our money?
Oh, that's a hard question. I think so, social impact, and I've told this to people all the time within our coffee shop, right? We vote with our dollars every day, right? Whether we're buying products, buying coffee, looking where the label says, right? When I think about all of our products and the slavery that was in our world back in, I think it still exists. We just hide it, is to be able to kind of know the impact of what we buy, what we consume matters, right? We are in a capitalistic world, but how that plays into our everyday actions really matters. So I think about not just voting in November, but I vote with my dollars every day, buying the right kind of coffee. And sometimes it might be what hits you, and you start learning, hey, as I go down this hole, there's other things that I might say, I want to make sure that my clothing isn't hurting somebody or isn't, you know what I mean? And there's so much that we can go into, but starting to realize that our dollars impact every area.
Well, tell us about any upcoming projects that you're working on that people need to be aware of.
Yeah, so we are Really working on a new website. So if you go to wealthwisdomfp.com, if you go to wealthwisdomfp.com/shop, you'll see our book. We have our community. The main thing that we're working on now is, hey, I know as I've run a business that I'm not the best at the wrapping paper, meaning I know we create a good system. We created a great book. We are utilitarian. So wrapping paper seems a bit stupid to me. Like, why would you spend all this money on something that you're just going to rip up? But what we've learned is a lot of people like that kind of thing. So we're working on a wrapping paper, if you will, with our new website and some other projects that hopefully will be out here in September, October, to help us personally, because we again are utilitarian. We're just like, but we're very much just thinking through, well, I don't need all this fluff. That's kind of ridiculous, but people like that stuff. So that's what I'm really working on, is how do I show that in a better way that makes people say, ooh, I'm really excited to look at my budget. I don't know. Most people aren't even excited about that stuff, but it impacts everything.
All right, we'll close this out with some final thoughts. Maybe if there was something I forgot to talk about that you would like to touch on, or any final thoughts you have for the listeners.
Well, for you, I'm curious, why do we name it Curveball? Like, why? I'm curious on that.
Well, I'm a hip hop artist, and my best friend Sean Davis, back in the seventh, eighth grade, named me Curveball. That's always stuck with me. Because of him,
Nice.
I want to keep the name alive, so that's why I did it.
Nice. So, what kind of hip hop?
Oh, just all kind. I like variety. I like to do variety in my songs that's gonna touch people.
Nice. Yeah, I know. Again, going back to some of the music, that affects people so much. But then there's some craziness out there. I talked to MJ. I've talked to Shaq and a bunch of other people along the way. It can impact people's lives, and there's also craziness, as you probably know. A lot of curveballs out there. Not you specifically, but life.
Oh, most definitely. Got any final thoughts for the listeners before we close it out?
No, my main thing is, you as a listener, take control of your own finances. Don't just delegate it to somebody else. Learn to think for yourself, because no one, I don't care who is in presidency, whenever this goes in, it doesn't matter. Understanding your own finances, and don't just be a victim, be a victor.
Wise words from Mr. Brandon Neely, ladies and gentlemen. Check out that money journal. Check out that podcast. Check out that website. Follow, rate, review, share this episode to as many people as possible. Jump on your favorite podcast app. Give us a follow and a review. If you have any guest or suggestion topics, C. Jackson or Curtis Jackson 1978 at att.net is the place to send them. Thank you for listening and supporting the show. And Brandon, thank you for all that you do, and thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Great to be here, Curtis.
For more information on the Living the Dream podcast, visit www.djcurveball.com. Until next time, stay focused on living the dream.